Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me today, Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor, and Broad Street Hockey's own Kelly Hinkle. Welcome, fam, to the first show of the 2024 Flyers offseason.
We did it.
There's still a couple more games to be played in the regular season, none by the Flyers. Could have been, maybe, an interesting one tonight, but no. Flyers lose. Detroit goes to overtime, and so it's all over. The Washington Capitals get that last playoff spot. Everyone else goes home. How we doing? A few, 16, 18 hours removed from the end of the playoff dream. How are we feeling about the team right now?
Still in the bummed out stage. It's kind of like the way it just kind of ended. Very, very whimper. Not bang. Just kind of just like I was saying before the show, like watching you guys realize in real time that it was already fucked because of the idiot Habs. It was just like, oh no. Now this game doesn't even matter. Like It's just all over. It was just like,
The watch party was a lot of fun. I thought we were going to get some good reactions at the end from the diehards that joined us, me and JP here live. But it was the opposite. Yeah. It was the negative reactions. But that's always good content too, I guess.
Yeah. I thought, I actually didn't think it ended really with a whimper. I thought it was a really exciting final day, to be honest. I mean, maybe it ended with a whimper because it didn't end the way you wanted it to. But, that Detroit game was in doubt, the outcome until the final seconds. The Flyers game was tied for the entirety of the third period. To me, and as I was someone who was not watching the Detroit game, obviously I was in the press box. To me, it was edge of your seat. I have no idea what's going to happen for about 2 straight hours. So I thought it was a pretty fun thing to cover.
No, I get what you're saying.
Even if it didn't end it all the way Flyers fans wanted it to.
It was more. I also wasn't really paying much attention to the Detroit game outside of just checking Twitter from time to time and the Slack chat and stuff. So I was super invested in the Flyers coming back and tying the game. And I was watching Bill live. And when I realized that he had realized this game doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter.
We had this monitor on and we had another one in here. So we had both games on and a little delay. We were watching on ESPN Hulu. So obviously it was 5 minutes behind probably.
Yeah, of course.
But no, there's 26 seconds or so on the clock in the game on the TV. And I have the box score opened. And it stops at 7 seconds. I'm like, all right, it's 4-3 with 7 seconds left. What could possibly happen?
What could possibly go wrong?
And then it stops again at 3 seconds. And I'm just like, oh no. And I see Detroit's score flip from 3 to 4. I'm like, guys, they're about to tie it up. And then we see how it happens. Icing, win the faceoff back to Ghost. David Perron tips it in. Flyers season over with 3 seconds left in the Detroit game, and that's really where I want to start tonight. Yeah. This collapse, listen, if you want to go back to the offseason, to September, even October, and go, they were never supposed to be here. How upset can we get? They're a rebuilding team. All right. But the 8-game losing streak and then everything that transpired last night. And listen, the goaltending, the losing streak, that's all really why they missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think John Tortorella deserves, he needs to write a thank you note to the Montreal Canadiens for icing the puck with 7 seconds left while leading 4-3. Because that lets him entirely off the hook for what he did last night. Benching Morgan Frost, and to a lesser extent, Bobby Brink, for the final 30, 32 minutes of the game When you have to score a goal. When Sam Ersson is saying in post-game interviews, we started this game down 1-0 because we had to win in regulation. The two guys, like Bobby Brink is one of your most effective, or Morgan Frost is one of your most effective offensive players. I thought Brink had a pretty effective first period. I know he had like a turnover at the blue line that kind of, but like if you're going to bench a guy when he makes one mistake in a must-win game and he has a chance to score a goal, like I think John Tortorella might be the right coach to instill the culture that we're trying to build here, and them competing all the way through the end is maybe proof of that. We've talked about him getting, moved upstairs, him moving upstairs at some point.
Yeah.
When this team is good, I can't have him as the bench boss. No. You can't bench Morgan Frost for the final 30 fucking minutes of a game where you have to score. Like, that's embarrassingly stupid. It's asinine, and any sort of excuse he gives for it, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And the proof is you scored one goal and it came off the stick of Eric Johnson in a must-win game. It ended up not mattering because Detroit ties it up and them just forcing overtime, it's over. But it came down to the final 7 seconds. There's a whole period and a half where it mattered.
And theoretically, you did not know that it didn't
you
matter.
had no idea. Montreal was in the lead that whole game. This is just, I have no explanation for this. And I haven't criticized Tortorella much in these first 2 years because big picture, I see what he's getting at. But these little decisions are going to matter when the games matter more. Like when this team's actually competing.
Yeah.
You lost the game on purpose last night as far as I'm concerned. And let's just get to the rebuild thing as well. Part of the reason we're not tearing it down and tanking is so these guys get experience in these big, meaningful games. That was the biggest game of both of those players' NHL career last night, and they got 30 minutes experience sitting on the fucking bench?
Yeah.
No, that did no one any good. Sorry. The rebuild wasn't helped by this. The team wasn't helped by that. What purpose did this serve other than the ego of John Tortorella?
Well, I mean, his answer would be, and I wouldn't necessarily agree with this, but his answer would be he was trying to win the game.
How'd that go?
And he put the guys on the ice that he felt like would give the team the best chance of winning the game. That's his reason. So if you're saying what purpose it served, that would be his reason, is that you hire him to pick the guys who on that night he believes are going the most. His belief was that Morgan Frost, Bobby Brink, and Cam Atkinson were not going, and were not going to, on that night, create any goals for the Flyers. So he went with the guys who he believed had a chance to do that.
Guys who never create goals.
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is that you can't just say it makes no sense. Like there is an answer as to why he did it. You could just, my viewpoint is that it was the wrong move. I said this last night.
There's no other viewpoint. He can give any excuse he wants. He's wrong.
Brink is whatever. Like, I can't get too hyped up about Brink. I think there was probably just as big of a chance Brink would have screwed up to lead to a goal against as to create a goal for.
Maybe.
Morgan Frost, on the other hand, yeah. I mean, he's been one of your best offensive players really since January. And I know he hadn't been playing great in the few games leading up to Game 82, but I don't think he'd been playing so bad that you should rule out in your head that he can't possibly be involved in a goal. Look, in my mind, this is just every coach, even the really good ones, are going to have blind spots, are going to have fatal flaws. And one of John Tortorella, like Andy Reid has won the last three out of the last 4 Super Bowls or something crazy. Like, we know from watching him in Philly what his fatal flaws are. We know them all too well. He's still a great coach. Yeah. Still one of the best coaches of all time. He has shit that he's bad at. He is not great at adjustments. We know this. He's really, really bad at time management. We know this. John Tortorella, one of his biases, blind spots, fatal flaws, is that when the chips are down, he's always going to trust the Ryan Palings and the Noah Cateses and the Garnet Hathaways more than the non-elite offense-only guys like Morgan Frost, like Bobby Brink. That's just who he is as a coach. That's who he's always going to be. I don't disagree with you that if that's who he's going to be, that should play a role in them deciding, if and when they have a team with a lot of those guys and they're looking to win the Stanley Cup or win more than one playoff round and whatever, that maybe you don't necessarily want that guy coaching that team. But I don't think it takes away from the fact that he's still a good coach. It's just that this is part of the Torts experience. He's done this at other stops where he leans on the grindy vet types in key situations. We got a taste of why that can be frustrating on Tuesday night. Simple as that.
It is. And he can give any reason. He's objectively wrong in this. Like, you don't bench guys who can score when you need to score. Ryan Poehling is a very good player. I like Ryan Poehling a lot. Glad he's going to be here. Hope he's part of a fourth line. Garnet Hathaway, Charlie, you said when they signed him, you know what? Since we have to watch every game, he's going to make our game viewing experiences a lot more fun for 82 games. And he absolutely did. Like watching these guys. Noah Cates, I've, especially the second part of this season, liked where he's kind of gotten back to his game. He played strong last night as well. None of those guys ever score. They don't score. They don't create offense.
Not often.
Like, if you're going to shelter, put him out in strategic situations of Morgan Frost, like, okay, we can't trust him in every situation, but we have to score. You need to figure out a way to do that. Your default cannot be, well, they're just not going to play. That's ridiculous. And if the Montreal Canadiens don't ice the puck with 7 seconds left, the reason we're not alive right now looking to tonight's Pittsburgh game is because John Tortorella was obstinate.
Obstinate is a good word. And it's also like you're needlessly shortening your bench in a game where
you went with 9 guys. You went with 9 forwards.
Yeah, you need the team firing at 100% for 60 minutes in order to win this hockey game. And you've just decided that you're going to take away a quarter of your forward core for reasons.
I guess his thought process would have been that the 9 guys he felt like were going, it gives them more opportunities to score. It gives them more minutes, more opportunities, more chance. I know they didn't. I know they didn't. But I understand why he did it, and I understand what drove it, because I understand to at least a decent degree the way he thinks and the types of players he values. And that speaks to, Bill, what you were saying, which is, if this is just who John Tortorella is,
we can't win with that.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that.
Well,
I don't think the Flyers can't
unless you come up with 12 all-star forwards and give him no choice.
No,
is he going to sit Mitchkov because he needs Garnet Hathaway out there in the third period?
I guess I'm not going to hold anything put anything past John Tortorella, but I don't think that this is so much of a fatal flaw that like John Tortorella is incapable of winning playoff games, because he will lean on Noah Cates instead of Morgan Frost in a game 7. Does it slightly decrease the win probability and maybe like a 0.5 percentage point? But it's not like a guarantee that because of that they're going to lose. There's a lot of reasons why the Flyers lost this game. Yeah. It's not just because Morgan Frost didn't play in the second half of the game.
And let's not confuse Morgan Frost and Bobby Brink with Travis Konecny or even Matvei Michkov, hopefully down the like. It's just that given the limited talent this team already has, you were like, we're going to have even less and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Like you look at, and it's not as if Ovechkin is the 65 goal guy anymore, but last night scored number 31. That's a pretty good total. TJ Oshie, not exactly what he was when this team won the cup or a few years ago.
Still scored the game
you
winner.
Look at who scored for them.
Yeah.
High-end, high-paid guys. Like, they leaned on those guys. They came through.
And the fact of the matter
Eric Johnson scored for the Flyers.
Yeah. Like
Eric Johnson.
Charlie's obviously correct about what his thought process was and why he does it.
Yeah.
But he was objectively wrong. So like that's a problem.
It is a problem.
In that his judgment is objectively wrong.
It's like
it's a problem. I guess I don't think
it's not like one time this has happened.
I don't think it's a problem that is destined to always work against him.
No,
because there are so many variables that go into winning a game that you can make a decision that objectively lowers your win probability and still win that game.
Sure.
And if that coach adds to win probability in other ways, even if he gives back in one particularly annoying way, the net can still be his net impact can still be positive on a team. So I don't disagree that it's frustrating. I don't disagree that it does need to play a role in the ultimate decision as to whether John Tortorella is the right coach when hopefully this team has a ton of skill if they ever get there. I think that is a reasonable point to make, and it has to be involved in the decision-making process when they get to that point. I just don't think it is like going to prevent John Tortorella from ever having playoff success with this team when he's head coach. I think that's a little much.
There's a lot of reasons they didn't make, like I said, if they just, forget the 8-game losing streak. If they just don't play 2 of their worst games of the season against shitty Ottawa this year, if they just beat the winless Sharks, we're having totally different conversations, right. Even if they have that 8-game losing streak.
And there's so many things you can look to. Like if they have a goalie that's not Cal Peterson against Pittsburgh in that one
they win that game.
They win that game easily. Like there's a lot of games you can point to and say that was the one.
It's just this was game 82 and this is the situation you were in. Like you can't fix what happened.
Yeah.
So you needed to do what you needed to do last night, and he failed to do that. Yeah. Ultimately, it did not matter, again, because of the Habs, and that's why I think he should write a nicely worded letter to the fine people of Montreal, Canada.
I mean, Montreal might respond decently well to that letter. I do not think the fan bases of Detroit and Pittsburgh would respond well to anything that John Tortorella has to say right now because they are pissy.
If there's any silver lining,
they're salty.
If there's any silver lining to this, obviously before the Flyers game ended, the fates of the other teams were kind of now in the court of John Tortorella. And I suppose he did not know when he pulled the goalie that it did not matter anymore. And that allows TJ Oshie to score the empty netter, which eliminates Detroit and Pittsburgh. And they're furious. And if there's any silver lining to this goddamn collapse, it's that Sidney Crosby ain't going to the playoffs.
Sorry.
Revenge for 97. We got you bitches.
I felt like
finally
reading all of those diatribes on Twitter.
Suck it, Yzerman.
On Twitter last night from Detroit and Pittsburgh people. I felt like the living embodiment of the Jerry Seinfeld. Well, that's a shame gift.
It's a shame.
Like I truly felt like that, the living embodiment of that gift.
I had, it's too bad about that. Typed out to 5 different people. I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk shit when my team went on an 8-game losing streak. Yeah. Lost 9 of 11 to close the season.
Yes.
Probably not going to do what am I going to say? But at least we kept them out of it. I'm going to get to that super chat in a second. First, I got to tell you about Game Time. Now, we won't have playoff hockey in Philadelphia, but that doesn't mean there's not a ton of events coming up, all the summer concerts, hopefully some Sixers playoffs after the play-in. Baseball, they're Game Time's an authorized retailer of MLB tickets as well, and Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. You get the killer last-minute deals. You have the all-in pricing, see what you're going to pay before you get to checkout. Views from your seats, always a big help, especially maybe you're going to a away game. You want to take a little trip, you get the seat view, and the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time credit you 110% of the difference. And Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for theater, concerts, sports, comedy, anything that you want to go to. You can get the last-minute deals and flash deals. You save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I see we have that super chat. I want to get to that before we move on. Not giving young players who can score during a rebuild / we're here, let's try to get in, see where these guys are. Game is ultimate in coaching hubris. I agree.
I think that's a good way to describe it.
I just think no master was served by this decision last night, whether it be let's see if we can get in, or whether it be let's give these kids a chance in these high-stakes games, because that's what this season was about.
I just think what it boils down to, and we talked about this during the first half, after Morgan Frost had the yell at Torts meeting in the beginning of January, it seemed like they got past it. But before that, I made the joke / point, because it less kind of became a joke and more just a reality, that John Tortorella when something would go wrong, he would bring out the in case of emergency bench frost button.
Yep.
And for 3 months, he put it away. But then when the stakes were highest, when he absolutely needed a win, when it was the emergency of all emergencies, he couldn't help but take the button out of his desk and press it again, because that's where his biases show. He's been biased, in my mind, against Morgan Frost for basically his entire coaching tenure in Philly.
Yeah.
And he's showing a similar bias against Bobby Brink. We made the comparison after the Couturier scratch about, yes, Tyson Foerster is a better two-way player than Bobby Brink, absolutely. Tyson Foerster also couldn't score for like 2 straight months and never got pulled out of the lineup, whereas Bobby Brink has like a week and a half that's bad. He gets benched for 2 more weeks and then has to be sent down. Like, there is a bit of a double standard here. And the double standard is if you're one of Tortorella's guys, you're going to get to play in these games. If you're Ryan Poehling, if you're Garnet Hathaway, if you're Noah Cates, you're going to be in the rotation in game 82, do or die. If you're Morgan Frost or Bobby Brink, if you're not actively like making it impossible for him to bench you, you might get benched because you're just not one of his guys. And that's just the reality of John Tortorella, the coach. He does a lot of good things, but that's just something about him that, like, what's he, 65 years old? It's not changing at this point.
No. Was it after the game last night? Because we're going to get to the exit interview stuff from today, but just to put a bow on the whole Detroit and Pittsburgh thing. Did he know, like, what happened with the decision to pull the goalie? Like, when did he know? Do we know any of that? I feel like he addressed it.
So I asked him after the game what the timeline was. I asked him if they were following along with the Detroit-Montreal game or if they just came in with the game plan of, we're going to have tunnel vision, and if it's in, if it's tied at near the end of regulation, we're pulling the goalie regardless of what's going on in that other game. He said that they were getting updates on the Detroit game. It was just that when they made the decision, Torts' last update from the video guys was Montreal is still winning. It still matters for you to pull the goalie. It still makes sense. They pull the goalie, then, like, I mean, it's funny. I didn't even see the Flyers pull the goalie because I was so zeroed in on the fact that Detroit had just scored to tie it. I was starting to type up things on Twitter, so I wasn't following the on-ice stuff for the Flyers super closely anymore because it no longer really mattered. I look up and I see TJ Oshie along the boards fighting with the puck, and then I see there's nobody in goal, and I'm like, okay, I guess they pulled the goalie. So that's why I'm very open to the fact that, like, all of this happened very close together.
Yeah.
Like, it was pretty much simultaneous. It didn't feel simultaneous to the people with 2 screens up and watching with the best system possible. Yeah. But, like, John Tortorella was coaching a hockey game. And I think it is extremely plausible that he did not find out that Detroit tied that game until, and this is what he said, he didn't find out that Detroit tied the game until right after Oshie scored. Then Oshie scores, they're down 2-1, and then the video guy, I guess he was waiting for the next stoppage. The video guy's like, by the way, John, the Detroit game's in overtime, we're out. And then it's like, well, all right.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to keep pulling the goalie now because now we're actually losing. But the situation is, I just think it was one of those situations where it seemed worse to people who have the benefit of technology, whereas the people on the bench obviously don't, and we're also doing another thing that was very stressful and requiring focus. So the idea that John Tortorella, well, I find it very funny. The idea that John Tortorella got in his earpiece, hey, Detroit sent it to overtime, you guys are out. And John Tortorella's immediate thought was, how can I screw over Detroit and Pittsburgh the most?
Get over yourself.
That would be amazing if that's what he did. But I do not think for a second that's what he did.
No,
I like to
pulling
think
the
that's what
goalie
happened. Yeah.
was the right thing to do. Like, in the vacuum of that Flyers game, pulling the goalie was the right thing to do because they had to fucking win the game.
Yeah.
And, like,
so
we were talking from like the 9-minute mark, basically. Like, when's he gonna do this?
Yeah.
Like, so what if he does it a minute earlier? The game. It came down to 7 seconds. They scored with 3 seconds left to tie the game.
Yeah.
Like,
no one cares as much about you, Penguins fans. I'm sorry to break it to you. This is only funny now because it happened. Like, that's why we care about it.
I'm glad it
No
happened.
one cared before.
Yeah.
Like, no one went into this game thinking, how can we fuck over the Penguins? Like,
well,
no
maybe
one
some
cares.
Flyers fans did.
Yeah, I don't even think so. I don't think so. Not until that exact moment.
The people who were anti-playoffs all along were like, let's lose so we screw the Penguins.
I think it was more of like, the Flyers are going to lose this game. I guess I'll take solace in the fact that also we fucked over the Penguins. Like, that's where I think most of it was.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, let's get to
Looks like we have one more super chat before we get into exit interview. We'll tie the bow on this. From James Gal, Frost isn't even bad defensively, just makes the worst hockey guy mistake, getting muscled off the puck. If you feel that way, I guess that way being that he's bad defensively, try him at wing. They think he's a center. They believe he'd get lost along the boards if they played him at wing, which is why they don't particularly like him at wing. I do agree, though, that by the numbers this year especially, but last year too, honestly, he graded out decently well defensively. I certainly don't think he's ever going to be like prime Sean Couturier, and he's, of course, not a physical stalwart, so he is going to have some breakdowns where he just gets out muscled that coaches are going to hate. But I do agree, James. I don't think Morgan Frost is a defensive liability. I just think that he is not one of Torts' guys.
He just doesn't trust him.
Okay, guys, we got to stop with the super chats. We got to get to exit interviews. Gary, what is this?
Please.
Annoyed by the lack of play Torts gave Brink and Frost. Thank you, Charlie and Billy, for a great season of insight. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Much appreciated.
All right,
Kelly.
What?
Billy.
It says thanks,
Charlie and Billy. Oh,
Yeah.
I forget that you can be called Billy.
Yeah, me too.
I'm
My
doing
bad.
it now
I'd like to
forever.
get it.
No, I want to get to these exit interview things because about a half an hour before the show, we asked our producer, Brenna, to do all these things. And now we're half an hour into the show and we haven't even gotten to exit interviews. So please stop with the super chats for like 5 minutes.
Send your $4.99 directly to me.
So we can get into the exit interview stuff.
Where do you want to start?
I want to start with the injuries.
Okay.
Because that's always the most interesting part of exit interview day.
We'll go with the two top defensemen first because we've talked for months now, basically, about Sanheim and York and what they've been dealing with along the way. It seemed like they both maybe found a second wind late, but it was very clear they weren't healthy for a while. What did we find out about them today?
Well, Sanheim didn't go into details of the exact injury, but he acknowledged that he was hurting. He said that, especially, it seemed like he was implying, especially in the first half of March into the second half of March, he was hampered from his skating. He said that, though, it got better, that he did a better job of handling it over time. And by the end of the year, his skating was mostly back, which more or less lines up via the eye test.
Yeah.
That it did look like the burst was coming back by the end. There were a few rushes in those last few games when the Flyers got back on the winning side of the ledger when Sanheim started looking more like himself.
Definitely.
So that all tracks with Sanheim. It wasn't any secret he was banged up, but it's always nice to hear when players don't try to lie to your face and acknowledge that, yes, I was hurting. I was not just, wasn't just a hockey hurt. It was like, no, I was playing through some shit. Cam York also, and this is something I had been hinting at for a long time about him. And I actually want to talk about Cam York specifically before we get to Drysdale, who's the most interesting one. But Cam York reveals that he had a grade 2 AC sprain suffered in February. That was in the Toronto game. That was a few days before the outdoor game. York essentially said, frankly, admit it, I probably should have sat for a few games, but I really wanted to play outdoors. And so they gave me a shot. I dealt with it, and I played through it. I don't love that.
That's why it can't be their choice.
I don't love that.
Ever.
That said, even though I don't love that in terms of what it says about the Flyers' lingering willingness to let the inmates run the asylum, the fact that we know, this is a 4 to 6 week injury. Not necessarily 4 to 6 weeks in terms of a guy being out, but in terms of a guy taking that long to be back to 100%. The fact that Cam York played as well as he did, because he was their best defenseman in March.
Yes.
Yeah.
By a lot. Yeah. The fact that he played as well as he did, getting the workload he was getting, while not particularly close to 100%, that has me legitimately really excited about what he might be able to do next year.
Fair.
Because if 80% of Cam York can do that with 25 minutes a night, I'm excited to see what 100% of Cam York can do.
That's a good point.
With that kind of workload next season.
No, absolutely. One of the more encouraging parts of this season is the step Cam York took. And while I am disappointed that we did not get the Travis Sanheim three-peat for the Pelle Lindbergh Trophy, because that's objectively hilarious. A guy
It would've
being
been
most
good.
improved 3 times. York, I do believe, like, you go back 18 months, he didn't make the team.
Yeah.
And now he's their best defenseman.
Yeah, and it's funny. I want to give a little inside baseball on that idea that the Sanheim most improved. As funny as you find it that he's won the award twice, the players find it just as funny.
Oh, come on, guys. You could have done the funniest thing.
Don't they vote on this?
Because it was kind of a running joke, because like Joe, the Flyers PR guy, has to go around and get the votes, and like so many players, when Joe would ask, she's like, Sandy, give it to Sandy, and Sandy's like, no, you can't give it to me again.
You idiots.
So,
oh man,
you had the opportunity.
You blew the playoffs. If you had given me this, I would be a lot more lenient on you today. Honestly, knowing this now, I'm double disappointed.
So don't.
You knew the joke.
Don't think that they don't find it just as funny as you do. They find it very funny
fools.
that he's won twice and he had a legitimate case to win it a third time this year.
Like if he keeps up the pace of his first 2 months, he has to walk away with it because he gets Norris votes.
Yeah, then he finishes like 65 points.
Yeah, like I'm not saying he wins. I'm just saying like he's on the ballot. But Cam York absolutely did deserve that. So now we get to Jamie Drysdale and the health of the defenseman brought in as the Cutter Gauthier replacement in the trade with Anaheim. He obviously had a rough start to the year. He played the first 2 games for the Ducks, the 10th, October 14th and 15th, and then does not play again till December 21st. And 8 games after that gets traded to the Flyers, basically. Plays for the Flyers, and then he misses. His last game was at Pittsburgh, 2/25, doesn't play again. And
which we kind of knew.
That's true.
But now we know.
Well, you have to hear the way he answered this question.
We know. We still don't know for sure, but take a listen to this line of questioning that I had with him on exit interview day and tell me what you think.
Jamie, when the Flyers traded for you, we talked to you the first time. We asked about your health, and you more or less said that, I can manage it. Were you battling injury pretty much all year?
No excuses, but everyone deals with stuff, so just gonna work this off season to try and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Is there anything you're going to need to get cleaned up, or is that still unclear?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Who can say?
He was trying so hard not to reveal.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm allowed to say.
I'm still new here.
The initial pause when I asked him the question, he's like, 5-second pause where it's like, well, obviously I was injured, but I can't say, but obviously I was injured. Like, that is as clear as you can get without getting a direct answer that
I'm glad
he was battling through some things pretty much from the start. And also he's probably going to need some sort of surgical cleanup this summer.
This is, on one hand, all right, I'm willing to give him a bit of a pass for the lack of production and kind of being underwhelmed. Those first 2 games were electric, man.
Yeah, he looked real good
like,
there for a
okay, we got a piece. And now, I still think he has a good ceiling. I just have no idea what it is, and I very much doubt it's top pair defenseman. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. It still has the high
ready to roll that out
pedigree. The tools are obvious. Like, you look at this guy and, all right, man, that's skating unbelievable. You see the offensive instincts. He has had a 39-point season as like a 21-year-old or something. Like, the tools are there. High draft pedigree. But now I'm a little worried about this injury. It's not like he's the biggest guy. And I know, you dispel if being big prevented injuries, Rasmus Ristolainen.
Risto would have played in 2 games.
Exactly.
Eric Lindros, a goddamn monster out there. I mean, prone to concussions is a little different than injuries, but still not the biggest guy. He's going to take hits. If we talked about this when we had that conversation about if you can get one back for the playoffs when they were both still out, is it Risto or is it Drysdale? We joked about the idea of, well, we want to see playoff Risto, obviously. Right. But my thinking was also, if I'm a coach and Jamie Drysdale's out there with clearly some sort of shoulder, I'm dumping it in on his side every time and saying, go hit that fucking guy.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. He's not the biggest guy. I'm a little worried about these injuries piling up for him early in his career.
So I guess it's funny because it seemed like a lot of people on our Discord, a lot of people on social took it the same way you did, where they took that revelation as a bad thing. I guess I took
it's both. For
I
me.
took it as a good thing because it's like, okay, we saw how much he struggled this year.
Yes.
It makes me excited to see what he'll look like after an offseason where he has a chance to recuperate, hopefully get some work done, and then come back next year at 100%, hopefully.
Yeah.
That, like, I looked at that as a positive because if he was 100% healthy and played as bad as he played in a lot of these
Not
games,
great. Yeah.
I would be more concerned about his long-term upside than I am. However, I can't deny that there's an injury concern there that, if he's having another surgery, even if it's not a major one, might just be like a relatively minor cleanup that he needs to get done to make sure whatever he was dealing with all year heals correctly for next season. It could be that relatively minor because Kevin Kurz did ask him later, didn't include this in the clip, but he did ask him later, have you been told you'll be 100% for the start of camp next year? And Drysdale unequivocally said yes. So if he's having a surgery, it doesn't seem like it's one that has like a 6 to 8 month recovery timetable, which is good. I get why there's concerns about his injury proneness.
42 games played over the last 2 seasons. He's played half of one season over the last 2. That's concerning.
I get it. I guess my thing is always, I understand why people are like, well, guys who get injured always get injured. They do until they don't.
Yes.
There's always a Justin Williams who spends his early 20s injured all the time and then is a friggin' Iron Man from age 27 to age 36. Like,
Fair.
Injuries are fluky.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're not. Is it possible that Jamie Drysdale could be an injury-prone guy his entire career? Sure, it's possible. It's also possible that once he gets past this most recent thing, he'll have 3 straight years of 82 games. I don't necessarily decide that a guy is always going to be injured just because he's gotten injured a few times.
I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but like now it's another, all right, this is something we got to watch out. Like it's just another red flag en route to developing this guy that they don't think was developed properly to begin with.
Sure.
Like he has to revamp his defensive game. He has to totally reacclimate to what this John Tortorella system is if he's going to listen. He's a highly skilled guy. But he doesn't appear to be like a 90-point defense. Like this ain't Roman Yossi we're talking about. And what are we seeing with, guys who have good offensive upside but can't defend, at least in the coach's eyes, can't defend? They don't play.
No.
And if the coach doesn't like the dude we got for Cutter Gauthier, that's a little concerning.
Yeah.
It's just another thing to worry about along this way. But I got to catch up on some.
Yeah. Like the fans don't have enough things to worry about.
Yeah, I got to catch up on some ad reads. What I'm worrying about right now, it's allergy season, man. You can probably tell if you follow the show. There are days in which my voice isn't the best. I am certainly an allergy sufferer. The itchy red eyes, absolutely. Sneezing, nasal congestion. You can hear it from me. Scratchy throat. You've definitely heard all of this from me. So you wonder, what can you do? Well, the first thing you can do to help with a little bit of allergy relief, sign up for Rite Aid Rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards to receive pollen alerts from your area. And if the pollen count is high, maybe try to stay indoors. Keep windows closed. Run the air conditioner as needed. One tip here that makes remove shoes and coats right when you walk in the door. Minimize tracking in the pollen in your home. And take a shower before bedtime. Wash away any pollen on your skin and hair. And you can go to Rite Aid for over-the-counter options available at all your local Rite Aids. Try a nasal rinse to help flush your nasal passages. When symptoms are flaring up or when you know pollen counts are high, you can try antihistamines such as loratadine. Oh no, I've lost it. Let's see if we can.
I believe in you so much.
I've lost the ad reads.
Oh no,
I'm trying here.
R.I.P. the ad read.
Yeah, this is going real well. Thanks. This is horrible. I got to scroll back down. Anyway, you can go to Rite Aid for all of these over-the-counter options. Make sure you're signed up for Rite Aid Rewards as well, as I'm trying desperately find this read again. I don't know how I did this. There we go. All right, it was all the way at the bottom. And 1 to 2 weeks before pollen allergies are expected to be high, you can try things like nasal corticosteroids.
What are they doing this to you?
Listen, try the over-the-counter options at Rite Aid. Still not enough relief.
Take your
Rite Aid
shoes off,
pharmacist is a different type of Rite Aid pharmacist is a different type of allergy medication. Like decongestant might be necessary. You can always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on your way to get relief during allergy season. Visit your local Rite Aid today. Stock up on allergy relief or catch up on immunizations for RSV, shingles, and more. Walk in or schedule a vaccine appointment at riteaid.com.
That was amazing.
That went real well.
I'm so proud of you.
We'll get better.
The next clip.
It's a new read.
Yeah, I gotta practice saying those words.
Yeah. Next up, we want to talk a little bit about Travis.
Now we have
Konecny.
Travis Konecny, and the talk about him. We heard months ago that while he's not eligible for an extension until July 1st, there's going to be talks, and general consensus is that thing's going to get done on or around July 1st. I don't know if that's what we heard today, and we have a clip from TK when asked about the potential contract extension coming up.
You're obviously eligible to sign an extension this summer. Have you had talks about that with Danny, your agent?
I'm sure. I mean, down the road here, I'll deal with that. I haven't really been focusing so much on trying to get in, but we'll see moving forward.
But you can still see yourself here. It's a long.
I love Philly.
So the money quote there is "I love Philly," which truly believe he does. He lives right across the street from his best bud Travis Sanheim. He's obviously a fixture in that room. He took a letter this year. He's stepped up to a leadership role. He does love it here, but there was no you were directly asked do you want to resign here? And "I love Philly" is not an answer. That is a deflection.
I love cheeseburgers.
Yeah. It's a deflection.
No,
and it strikes, that very much struck me as Travis Konecny making sure that he is not giving the Flyers any extra leverage to use against him in negotiations, which is interesting because it tells you that, hey, don't think you're getting TK at a discount.
I want my number.
Yeah.
I love it here. And I'll sign an extension if you meet my demand.
You're gonna pay me, right?
Exactly.
And honestly, I don't know what why do this on July 1st?
Yeah.
You have until you have a year. You have a whole year. And if I'm him, I'm thinking that listen, I think the team took a step. Am I going to commit to a team for 8 years when they have the exact same record or worse next year? Why would I do that to myself when I will hit the open market and it's a 7-year contract versus an 8, but I'll get more. That's what happens in free agency. You get more. That's why every players association fights for it so hard.
Well, here's the thing. If I'm Travis Konecny, I would want to get this deal done July 1 because I'm coming off a sick year as the best player on the team. You don't know what next year is going to be. Next year, you could get hurt 3 weeks into the season and not play, or you could just be shit for whatever reason. And now all of a sudden, your contract year, you've lost all of your leverage because you aren't as good as you were last year. There's a million things that could happen.
It's a risk reward. It's a risk reward on both sides.
Which is why I don't think that the Flyers need to be in any rush, because right now Konecny does have all the leverage. He is the one that the Flyers need more than the Flyers need him in this current iteration of Travis Konecny. So let it play out. See what happens in 6 months.
But the thing is that while you can say that they need him, and they do, if the goal is to win hockey games, they need Travis Konecny. He is the one clear difference maker they have up front. However, if the goal is to rebuild, they really don't need him. So it is. Well, it kind of depends on what your incentives are,
right? Yeah,
and that's
because then it becomes we didn't tear it down before, and I feel like trading Travis Konecny or whatever, indicating that you're not going to re-sign him, that's kind of tearing. That's a tear. Now we're tearing it down because now we don't have a good player anymore.
And that's
it.
From both sides, if I'm Travis Konecny, I want to know what the timeline is. And if I'm the Flyers, I'm like, does he fit the timeline? I don't think we got concrete answers out of that for that question this season. Like, I think, like, part of me thinks this timeline they know is longer than we thought a couple of weeks ago.
I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm legitimately interested to hear how Danny is going to position this stuff on Friday, because Friday is part 2 of the exit interviews. We talked to General Manager Danny Briere. We talked to head coach Sean Tortorella. That truly puts the bow on the Flyers season. Then everybody goes home. I am really curious to see how Danny talks about and frames his plan for the offseason, because you've heard some rumblings over the past month or so that this could be a busy offseason and that they know they need high-end talent. And by them saying they know they need high-end talent, it is not like, well, we know we need it down the road. It is, we know we need it and we might try to be getting it this summer. And I will just be intrigued to see how he frames his plan for the offseason, because if their plan for the offseason is to go out and spend some assets and get, a couple potential impact guys between the ages of 23 and 26, and they think they have ways to do that, then I'm significantly more on board with re-signing Travis Konecny, because then you're accelerating the timetable. But if all of his comments on Friday are more about, well, we need to be patient with the rebuild, we need to stockpile assets, we need to put ourselves in position down the road, this summer isn't when the big moves are going to happen, then you really do start to wonder, does he fit the timeline if we're moving? And I don't necessarily think it's the wrong move to say that this is not the summer to go all in. But if you say that, then you have to explain how, re-signing a 28-year-old Travis Konecny to an 8-year deal fits with your more patient timeline. Whereas if you go out the summer and you trade for 2 25-year-old studs and you empty out your draft pick pool or whatever to do it, and you trade away a couple prospects, then I get why you would re-sign Konecny, because you think you're going forward in the next couple years, and you want to be a legitimately good team for when Mitchkov gets here. You don't want to be a non-playoff team for when Mitchkov gets here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know, like, we can't hold the previous regime against them, but this is now 4 years in a row they've missed the playoffs. They've missed the playoffs 8 of the last 12 seasons.
Oh.
This is just so not the Flyers. They had the stretch in the 90s, right, leading up to Lindros, where they missed 5 times. But I remember when they missed for the first time in, I think, 12 years. And then that was back with a vengeance season.
Yeah.
They missed the playoffs. They draft second. For some reason, they went 22-16, drafted second. And then they go all in that offseason, and they're back in the Eastern Conference Final. And I know that's not what we're looking at this offseason, but I just setting up for a 5th straight year of missing the playoffs. They said they want to get back to being what the Flyers are. That ain't them. And I'm not saying it's a good idea, but this is such a big offseason for Danny, and how he's going to sell it Friday, and then to see how this plan unfolds. Yeah. I am very interested, because I don't think there's a definite right answer, but there's a lot of wrong ones.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you're seeing it with all the concerns about Drysdale.
Yeah.
Drysdale, I am in no way, shape, or form out on Jamie Drysdale.
No.
However, he was clearly a guy who this new regime has identified as someone who they think, not immediately, but over time,
he was a target,
can be a high-end guy, can be one of those high-end talent players that we all agree this team needs. And I understand why, and I do not count myself as part of this group, but I understand why if you have watched Jamie Drysdale and you have just decided this dude sucks or he's never going to play, he's only going to play 30 games a year, if that's your certain evaluation of Jamie Drysdale, I understand why you'd be like, and he's the first guy that Briere's trying to sell us on being a high-end guy that he's acquired. And then you lose faith in Danny's ability to correctly identify the guys he's going to go out and acquire to fit the high-end talent thing. Because, one thing about this is that all of us agree, and by all of us, I mean everybody here, all the fans, and the front office people. We all agree the team needs high-end talent. The one thing we really haven't talked about is the possibility that the groups have different definitions of what high-end talent is.
That is true.
Like, when we think high-end talent, we think like top of the lineup, freaking awesome players. If their definition of high-end talent is Jamie Drysdale, then I don't know if that's sufficient. You know what I mean?
It's the evaluation. That's the one thing
you got to trust their evaluation, and we'll see if they earn that trust.
It's the thing we just don't have the answer to yet. Like, we like what they've done in the draft. We like some of the trades Danny has made. We don't know what he and this regime is in terms of evaluating those guys, and especially like projecting this is going to be a first line guy. This is going to be a top pair defense. Like, when we talked to Keith Jones after the Jamie Drysdale trade, he's like, yeah, we're focused on center now because we think we got that guy.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
Well, but I'm not willing to say no, they didn't. I'm just going to say the jury's out. And you need to wait and see. I'm not willing to write Jamie Drysdale off as a potential first pair defenseman. It sounds like you are.
I'm not willing to write him off as a guy who can be a big part of this. A guy who I'm turning over half a playoff game to. I'm like, he's my dude. I don't know if I see that. And he's played hurt. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe I'm not saying I'm right. Like, I'm not fucking Danny Briere smarter than me.
Cam York.
But like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, maybe that's who he was talking about.
Yeah,
So we got that guy.
Before I gotta get Foco in here. Listen, Travis Konecny said, "I love Philly." Foco loves Philly, man, because they have the absolute best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms, especially us. And now it's beach season, it's tailgate season, baseball. NBA playoffs, whether you're looking for hoodies, jackets, beachwear, overalls, something for the game, there's something for fans for almost every occasion at Foco. And if you're in the market for some of those accessories, toys, or collectibles as well, you got to use Foco for that. You've got to use Foco for all your team gear needs. Foco always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in the description of this show. And for all non-presale items, use promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. That's promo code PHLY10 at Foco today. A couple of things I want to get to before we get out of here. We took care of the two clips.
Yeah, let's talk about Couturier.
Let's
talk about Couturier. This will be the last aspect of the exit interviews we're going to talk about on the show. However, keep an eye out on allphly.com. I will be posting an in-depth 10 takeaways article for diehards only later tonight. I will be up late writing that article, so keep an eye out for that. And if you want to read it, come a diehard. Join our crew.
So Coots had like the tale of two seasons to a degree I don't know I've ever seen before. He finishes the year with totals of 11 goals, 27 assists in 77 games. He finishes a -10. 77 is the most games he's played since he hit 80 in 2018-19. Now there's the two COVID seasons, there's the injuries. But the fact is he hasn't hit that mark since he was 26. He's now 31. Coots in the first 41 games of this season, 10 goals, 20 assists, plus 12. He looked like Coots, man.
He did.
He looked as close to Coots as we could possibly ask for, coming off of, basically 2 seasons lost to injury.
In December, the only two things that were not, I did an in-depth article for diehards only in late December, and the two things about his game that had not come back were faceoffs, which ultimately did come back. He was much better in the second half of winning faceoffs, and then the finishing ability around the net. And that never really came back. He told me, he's like, I think it's coming back. I'm getting closer. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. And then not only did that not come back, it never did. Everything else disappeared too.
And then in those final 33 games he played, 1 goal, 7 assists, -22. I know we don't love to use that stat, but when I see first half of the season +12, second half -22,
not great.
Like, that is a wild swing in what took place on the ice when he was on the ice between the two halves. And he acknowledges it.
Yeah, no, we got some very, very honest quotes. The money quote I thought from him was, I just plain and simple sucked down he said road. He very clearly meant stretch. English is his second language. But just like, hey, I sucked. I know I sucked. It doesn't make it any better that he sucked, but at least he wasn't trying to dodge the fact that he was bad. He knows he was bad. Everybody knows he was bad. And while he didn't straight up say that he was gassed because of the fact that he missed a year and a half, I think he probably believes that his body was worn down. He played through One thing that probably did go a little underreported, but I think likely played a role in this, he was apparently dealing with a lot of injuries in the first half that were completely unrelated to his back. And he played through them all. And I do wonder if at some point his body was just like, yeah, dude, you pushed me too fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and not even just because of the missing a year and a half, but that in tandem with the fact that, like, 4 other parts of his body were injured. His back is still probably not as, it's almost certainly not what it was pre 2 back surgeries, that he just needs to figure out a better way of managing his energy to be able to stay effective through 82 games and then hopefully into playoff runs in the future. This year, he didn't do a good enough job. John Tortorella didn't help him much by playing him 20 minutes a night for the first half of the year. But Couturier also has to do a better job of managing his own energy and not emptying the tank in the first half, because the Flyers aren't going to do much in the future if the guy who's getting paid nearly $8 million a year is consistently a no-show in the second half of every season.
God, I just really think this is more on the team than the players. Like, players aren't ever going to not go balls to the wall 100 miles an hour the entire time. They don't know how not to. Like, Cam York is going to say, yeah, I'm hurt, but I want to play outside, so just shoot me up. I'm going to keep going. Like, that decision's got to be taken out of their hands. Like, someone outside of Sean Couturier's mind needs to look at him and say, all right, buddy, you can't play 30 minutes a night.
Well, he wasn't playing that much.
I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
We need to manage the load a little bit. Like, somebody outside of these guys needs to be the adult to say, if we're going to have you for 82 games, we can't play you like this for the first 20. It's never going to work. And I don't know if this is a hockey thing or if it's a Flyers thing. I think it's more of a hockey thing than a Flyers thing.
That's the issue.
Yeah, I
think
think you're probably right.
There's only going to be, like, we're never going to get NBA style load management, and I don't want that. Like, I like watching the good players play.
Even the NBA seemingly doesn't want that anymore, given the rule changes they made to the awards.
It has become out of hand in that sport. But, like, hockey is a physical game, and guys are gonna have to learn to play through shit. I'm not saying he's clearly done it. He's played a ton of games throughout his career. But, like, if it's ever, well, he was hurt. Like, I can't accept that as an excuse, man. Like, everyone gets hurt every year. It's hockey. Half of the defensive strategy is purposefully getting hit with 100-mile-an-hour pucks.
Fair.
Like, there are gonna be injuries.
Yeah.
And, like, yes, they needed to do a better job load managing, and maybe that's where, like, in the first part of the season, it was like, what's the goal here?
Right.
Like, if you're telling me playoffs aren't, like,
yeah.
We're sitting down with management and they're telling us playoffs aren't the priority for them, but behind the bench, it clearly is.
Right.
Like, from the decisions they made with young guys throughout the season that we talked about in the beginning of the show up to game 82, and the decisions they made with the goaltending, the decisions they made. Like, yeah, we got to play Sam Ersson every night because he's our only chance to win. Is that the goal, though? Like, it's just, it doesn't seem congruous. Congruent.
Well, congruent.
You got there.
Well, this brings us to the second part of the Sean Couturier interview, because there were really 2 main points of emphasis in the questions asked to Couturier. The first part was, yo, Sean, what the hell happened in the second half, dude?
Yeah.
The second was, okay, you were part of one of the biggest stories of the team over the final month and a half of the year when you were the captain of the team and you were scratched for 2 games. So one thing I asked him, because this to me has always been the best case scenario outcome to all of this. Last year, John Tortorella and Travis Sanheim butted heads. He scratched Travis Sanheim for a game in Calgary when his friends and family were scheduled to be in the building. There was very clearly lingering tension from that scratch. Travis Sanheim was very hurt by it. His teammates didn't like it at all. The 2 of them, by the 2 of them, I mean Travis Sanheim and John Tortorella, had conversations in the offseason. They kind of, settled, or at least cleared the air, got past it. And then this year, Travis Sanheim was, at least for the first half of the year, their clear best defenseman. I think on the whole, he was their best defenseman if you're looking at the season in aggregate. Cam York was better in the second half, to be sure, but Sanheim was still second. And I think on the whole, Sanheim was better. Sanheim had a good year. He put it behind him. Torts praised him up and down this year, was giving him 30 minutes a night in March. They found a way past it. my best case scenario for Coots and Tortorella is always going to be the Sanheim thing. Let's go that path. So I asked Sean Couturier today, I basically asked him, do you think that you can have those same conversations? You're going to have those same conversations with Torts this summer when things die down a little bit. He said, I do. And we've had a couple already, but I expect that we will have those conversations. Then more questions were asked about the nature of Sean Couturier's relationship with John Tortorella. And this is where we're going to go to our final clip, because I thought this was interesting. We not have a clip? We don't have a clip. Okay. Well, in any case,
What'd he say?
He basically said something to the extent of, I'm not always going to agree with him. He's not always going to agree with me. But as long as we both care about winning, then I guess we'll be okay. And it very much struck me. And I didn't want to paraphrase. That's why I wanted to have the clip, because I'm afraid I'm going to be presenting this in a wrong way. I read that as like, they're never going to be buds. Or at least right now, he doesn't think they're ever going to be buds. He thinks they can coexist. He thinks they can have a professional relationship. But I read it and heard it as if like, yeah, there's still some bitterness there on Couturier's part.
I think this should be expected, honestly.
Yeah, and this is, like you said, Torts doesn't have his exit interviews with players right after the season, because like there'd be fistfights, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying that was the tone or tenor of, but like maybe as everyone kind of just gets the opportunity to take a step back, they can then have those conversations. Because listen, and not everyone has to be buddy. You don't have to. No. Who out there? Like, I mean, we're very lucky. I like our bosses here, but I've had plenty of jobs where I was like, fuck the bosses. You know, I was very much McNulty. But like
Bill McNulty.
Jimmy
my God.
Yeah. Like,
Jimmy McNulty.
Like
this is a reference to The Wire, if you haven't seen the show.
Yeah.
The very difficult main character.
This doesn't seem great. Like, this doesn't seem like a good situation to have your captain and current highest paid player and the coach, and he's just like, don't love him.
I guess the flip side of it, and what you can say, is that like him and LeCavalier didn't get along either, and they want to come together. So like,
he also took the C off of him.
You can make it work.
It on Coots this year.
You can make it work, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying, though.
No, it's John Tortorella is never going to be best friends with all of his players. I mean, I told you I was listening to, I can't remember what show it was on, but an interview with, I think it was Ryan White or Dale Weiss, one of the guys, and he like talked about watching tape of the Rangers with Torts, and like Gabby would just be nowhere near where he had to be to block a shot, and Torts wouldn't say anything. He'd just keep rewinding it over and over to see if Gabrick would be like, all right, man, I get it. And he would just sit there silent, not giving him what he wants.
Right.
And like, listen, that team went to a cup, you know, like
not under him, but
they didn't go with him.
It was the Vigneault year they went to the cup.
That's right,
because they fired Torts after apparently everyone in the exit interviews told the general manager like, we can't deal with this dude, and then they hired Vigneault and they went to the cup final.
The two switched, right? He went to Vancouver, and then that went well. That lasted a week and a half. This just doesn't seem like a great situation. Like, I'm not saying they can't overcome it. I'm not saying it's not even like this might not even matter when camp opens.
Maybe not.
But at this moment, it doesn't seem great. That's all.
This was my big concern always about the scratching of Couturier, is that you risk really hurting the relationship with your captain, and your captain has by definition has a lot of influence in that room. You wanted him to have that influence apparently because you put the C on him, and then you risk alienating him. I'm not saying that they can't get past it. I'm just saying that it's something that we are going to have to keep an eye on next year. My hope is that they replicate the Sanheim situation. They have some productive conversations in the offseason. They both get a better understanding of where each are coming from. And then next season, Sean Couturier does first half Couturier, but does it the entire season, and has John Tortorella praising him every third game for how much he's doing for the team, like he was doing with Travis Sanheim. That would be the hope.
That's the best. That's the best possible outcome. And it's not. Listen, like we just saw it play out with with other. So
it has happened before.
It has happened before. Before we get out of here, just want to do the newsy thing. Massimo Rizzo signs his ELC. It starts next year. Just wins the national championship with Denver. He's got 2 under his belt.
Sources tell me he also just won the most Italian sounding name award as well.
South Philly's own Massimo Rizzo.
Absolutely will play well with this fan base.
Yes.
What do we think? Like, I don't think he's a non-factor, but what do we see him being ultimately in the NHL? He's like 175 pounds, not the biggest guy, put up decent numbers in college. Also,
pretty good numbers, to be honest.
But also
over point per game.
Also on a powerhouse team.
Fair.
At 22 years old, like you should play well. He got hurt this year, but his numbers were still decent. He's definitely a guy to keep an eye on, but certainly not a blue chip prospect.
No,
I mean, Carolina was like, "Here, have him." Here, have him.
Third liner, probably a good third line player. Which you got to have those.
See, I don't know about that because I guess my view of Rizzo has always been that he is one of those boom bust guys where either he's going to be a top sixer because it translates and he's going to score a lot of points and he's going to be like a Bobby Brink type, or he's going to be a career AHLer because I don't think his game necessarily translates to a bottom 6 role.
So he's Boyd, Kane, or Alex Ovechkin, and nothing in between. That's what you're saying.
And that might be a little much, but I love your thinking, Kelly. He could be Jason Atkinson.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Man, we have spent
so many guys.
The amount of time,
just naming some guys.
Just guys.
The amount of time we've spent on guys like Jason Atkinson, Jordan Wheel, who was the Donique Martel.
Martel.
God.
Man, this is what happens when you cover a team this closely. But that's we still have some leftover mailbag questions. Listen, we have the rest of the week. We're not going anywhere.
There's a whole summer, fam.
Flyers season is over. PHLY Flyers just getting started, but that is it for us today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Before we get out of here, I got to tell you about an event coming up here in the PHLY universe. It is on Friday, May 10th at Manayunk Brewing Company. You can join Jamie Lynch and Renee Washington there at Manayunk Brewing for a live show and watch party as the Phils take on the Miami Marlins. It's going to be a great time. Head on out to Manayunk Brewing. You can absolutely check them out. It's brought to you by our friends at Manayunk and Miller Lite. But there's going to be a live pregame show at 6:30. Then they're going to watch the game. You can watch along with them, much like we did last night here at the studio. They'll be doing it at Manayunk Brewing, and then the post game as well. That will do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Subscribe right here on the YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Follow the podcast. You know all that stuff. Flyers are over, and we ain't. See you tomorrow, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.